Steve, what is the attraction to marijuana stocks in Canada?
So right now, there are some very hot sectors in the market. I don't have to really tell many of our viewers that, and they could just look at their portfolios if they're long a broad array of stocks. Many of them are doing quite well. But one sector that's gotten a lot of attention recently are Canadian marijuana stocks. And for those of you who are laughing, this is actually a real sector. As a matter of fact, it's estimated that I've heard anywhere between 50 and 60% of the retail volume that's been trading in Canada in terms of stocks and options has been trading in this sector. So it's very meaningful. And where it came to light the other day, there's a couple of things. First of all, Constellation Brands, symbol STZ, bought a big stake in Canopy Growth Company. In the US, its symbol is CGC. In Canada, its symbol is WEED. And to many people, that was sort of the real coming of age for this sector, where you had one very major manufacturer and distributor of alcoholic beverages investing in the marijuana industry. And very important to know that in Canada, marijuana is going to be decriminalized and actually legalized in October. So that's where a lot of the hype is coming from. And it makes sense in Constellation's case, being a manufacturer of legal intoxicants, to consider entering a similar field of legal intoxication. So I'm not going to moralize on this one, and I'm also going to try to stay away from the various puns that one can use about stocks being so high and things like that. But that was really a big catalyst to the sector. And what we saw was the deal for Stars to take about a 30% stake in Canopy was struck at $48.60 Canadian, and the stock got as high almost as $60 Canadian shortly thereafter. And if you look at charts of these companies, they're almost parabolic. In the case of Canopy Growth, that propelled the stock to new highs. In the case of a couple of other ones, Aurora Cannabis ACB and Aphria APH, those stocks haven't necessarily eclipsed the highs that they saw in January when there was a lot of hype in the sector, and then they really sold off. But something else that comes to mind is my wife got asked by a friend yesterday, can your husband recommend any good Canadian marijuana stocks for me? And when I start getting questions like that, that's when the yellow flags go up, if not the outright red flags. I think it was Bernard Baruch who said he got his signal to sell in the 20s when his shoe shine boy started asking questions about the stock market. And while my wife's friend is not necessarily as poorly read as, let's say, a 1920s shoe shine boy, when people start to ask questions of that nature, I start to get my guard up. So my thought would be, I think this is a sector where you will continue to hear a lot of news, a lot of hype. On Bloomberg last week, I highlighted a trade that one can look at if they're bullish short term but bearish longer term, where one would sell an at-money put in the short term, hoping that the stock rises, and buy a longer term, deeper out of the money put. And depending on how the structure is in some of these cases, you can actually do it for free. So that's a structure. If you think that the stock rises and then falls, that's a risk-controlled way to play it. But in general, I would be very cautious when I hear the kind of hype that I'm hearing, and look for strategies that, if you do feel the need to trade in this sector, keep your risks in control. Be a bit wary when you see these sort of parabolic moves, and be very careful with stops and risk control and entry and exit, or use options when appropriate to maintain your risk profile, because these things really have been moving around in a hurry, and I don't want to see anybody caught up in some needless hype.